before going into our course and before introducing myself, I would like to bring to your notice and talk about the philosophy of karma, because we are going to deal with the Indian schools of philosophy which revolves around karma. The true definition of karma can vary depending on who you ask. Some people adhere to the traditional meaning grounded in Eastern religions, while others interpret it from more of a Western view of good and bad. As a result, this can lead to different views on how karma applies to life. According to Dr. Jennifer Rhodes, a licensed psychologist, karma is simply those situations or interactions that help us navigate our path toward our higher purpose. We are often easily distracted and miss messages which make us believe we have a lot of bad karma. But those situations are simply signs for us to course correct and move forward toward our higher purpose. The journey is not about being perfect. It's about undoing what is not us and becoming who we really are, she adds. Tejal Patel, a meditation and mindfulness expert, looks at karma as a cycle of cause and effect. That's about action and not result. Karma is a philosophy of how to live our lives so we can truly become the best version of ourselves and live the most fulfilling life we desire. Since future isn't set in stone, Patel says we can change the path of our life by the choices, thoughts, and deeds we choose right now. There are 12 laws of karma. Everything is energy, including our thoughts and emotions. So, in essence, everything we do creates a corresponding energy that comes back to us in some form. Simply, everything we do creates either a positive or negative consequence. Using karma as a set of powerful guidelines for our life, we can incentivize us to be more mindful of our thoughts, our actions, and our deeds before we make any decision. Keeping that in mind, thinking of the laws of karma as guidelines to follow, we go through our daily life. Therefore, the 12 laws of karma helps us understand how karma really works and how to create good karma in our life. First one is the great law or the law of cause and effect. When most people talk about karma, they are likely referring to the great law of cause and effect. According to this law, whatever thoughts or energy we put out, we get back, whether it is good or bad. In order to get what we want, we have to embody and be worthy of those things. It's the concept of what we reap, we sow. For example, if you want love in your life, be loving to yourself. Second, the law of creation. The law of creation underscores the importance that life doesn't just happen to us. To make things happen in our life, we need to take action instead of waiting for something to magically come our way. We are the co-creator of making what we want based on our intentions. She recommends asking ourselves what we need to release so we can create space for things we desire to show up. Also, consider how we can use our skills, talents, and strengths to create something that not only benefits us but others too. The third one is the law of humility. According to Paul Harrison, creator of the daily meditation, the law of humility is based on the principle that you must be humble enough to accept that your current reality is the result of your past actions. For example, if you are blaming your colleagues for your poor performance at work, Harrison says you must accept that you created this reality by not performing as well as we could have. The law of growth is the fourth one. Growth starts from within. It is not something which is visible, but it is within. To positively shape the world, we need to start with ourselves first. That's because real change or personal growth begins with what we have control over, which is ourselves and not others. We can only control ourselves. So if we bring change or grow, make ourselves grow, then only we can think about other people to grow or have impact in other people's life. The law of growth also looks at the things you can't control and how you deal with accepting this fate. Ultimately, our focus should be on us, not trying to control the people or things around us. The law of responsibility. Alex Tran, a yoga instructor, says that law of responsibility is something which is a reminder that we own what happens to us in life. It's a great reminder that what happens to us is because of us. This eliminates the opportunity for us to look outward to find the cause of our problems. So we have to look for the cause within ourselves. The problem should be within us. We have to change the problem from within. She likes to use this to describe the karma law of responsibility. We are the product of our choices. Sixth is the law of connection. This law is based on the principle that everything in our life, including our past, present, and future, are connected. Who we are today is the result of our previous actions, and who we will be tomorrow will be the result of our actions today. Seventh is the law of focus. Focusing on too many things at once can slow us down and lead us towards frustration and negativity. That's why the law of focus encourages us to concentrate on one thing at a time. If we focus on higher values like love and peace, then we are less likely to be distracted by heavy feelings of resentment, greed, or anger. Patel says. The eighth one is the law of giving and hospitality. We must give to the things we believe in. This law helps us understand the importance of our actions reflecting our deeper beliefs. For example, if we want to live in a peaceful world, we need to focus on cultivating peace for others. The ninth law is the law of here and now. This is a very interesting law. To experience peace of mind, we have to embrace the present. This can only happen when we let go of negative thoughts or behaviors from our past. Inner peace is what our goal is. We have to try to reach inner peace. If we get too focused on past events, we will keep reliving them. One exercise Patel recommends to get in touch with the here and now is to get rooted in our senses. The 10th law is the law of change. According to this principle, history will continue to repeat itself over and over and over until we learn from the experience and take steps to do something different to stop this cycle of repetition. We can't allow history to repeat if the history was not something to cherish. Change gives us a new path so that we can create a new future and a better version of ourselves, free from the patterns of the past. The 11th law of patience and reward talks about to generate change in the future. We must be consistent in our karmic deeds today. So, the law of patience and reward talks about that we can't expect that one day if we are doing good deeds, we will be rewarded the very next day. No. We have to be good throughout our life. We have to perform well throughout our life in order to get rewarded at the end. We have to be good, be patient, that at the end we will be rewarded. We have to believe in it. It's no good living healthy for one day and then sabotaging it in the next. So, we need to be consistent in our goals and it will come to fruition. The 12th or the last law is the law of significance and inspiration. We all play a part and have something to contribute to this world. What we share may sometimes seem small to us, but can make an enormous difference in someone else's life. Patel says the law of significance and inspiration is a great law to focus on when we need a motivational boost or begin to feel like we don't have a purpose or matter. According to this law, every contribution we make will affect the world. We have been born with a specific gift, mission, and purpose that only we can bring into the world with our uniqueness. So, authentically, sharing our skills and gift is why we are. So, the 12 laws of karma that we went through can serve as a guideline or a roadmap to follow as we go through our daily life. These laws can help us understand how karma really works and the effect that we or our thoughts and actions can have on us and the world around us. Hello everyone, this is Dr. Madhurima Chakraborty, Assistant Professor, School of Education, Adamas University. Today we are going to learn about the course Philosophical Foundations of Education with the course code EDN 11005. First of all, we will be learning today about the Indian schools of philosophy. Before going into the Indian schools of philosophy, we should learn what is philosophy. Etymologically, the word philosophy is derived from two Greek words, philos and sophia. Philos means love, whereas sophia means wisdom. Therefore, philosophy can be called the love for wisdom or a systematic search for the pursuit of wisdom, meanings, realities, and values. Bertrand Russell, who was an eminent philosopher, defines philosophy as philosophy, like other studies, aims primarily at knowledge. Raymond defines philosophy as an unceasing effort to discern the general truth that lies behind the particular facts, to discern also the reality that lies behind appearances. What is philosophy of education then? Philosophy of education is a process of solving the educational problems through philosophical methods from a philosophical attitude to arrive at a philosophical conclusion and therefore results. It studies the nature, purpose, process, and ideas of education. The philosophy of education has its root in the Indian philosophy. Indian philosophy consists the systems of thought and reflection that were developed by the civilizations of the Indian subcontinent. All the Indian schools of philosophy has its root in the Vedas except the heterodox ones. When we talk about heterodox Indian schools of philosophy, automatically we need to know about the orthodox Indian schools of philosophy. Now, orthodox Indian schools of philosophy or the Astika systems are Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purvamimamsa or Uttaramimamsa and the Vedanta schools, whereas the heterodox or unorthodox or Nastika systems are the Buddhism, Jainism, and we also have Charvaka. Whenever we talk about Indian schools of philosophy, we should know that all the orthodox schools of Indian philosophy, as there are six, all six of them are dependent on the Vedanta or Veda. Now, Vedanta Darshana is based on the end portion of the Vedas, which are the Upanishads. It gives moksha or liberation through knowledge. It talks about the nature of Brahman and the ways to realize it are explained in the Upanishads. At first, the Upanishads might seem full of contradictions, but to systematize the thoughts of the Upanishads, Badrayana, sage Vyasa, wrote Brahma Sutra. Many sages interpreted Brahma Sutra according to their own school of thought. Therefore, the different schools of Vedanta have built their philosophy on the foundation of these sutras, that is the Brahma Sutra. The four main subdivisions of Vedanta interpreted the Brahma Sutras according to their own way of thinking. Now, Vedanta has the Advaita Vedanta, which talks about Brahman as the only reality and is the oldest of the Vedantic school. It says that Brahman is the only reality that exists, nothing whatsoever which is not Brahman. The appearance of dualities and differences in this world is a superimposition of Brahman, which is called Maya. Now, Maya is the illusory and creative aspect of Brahman. Maya is neither existent nor non-existent, but appears to exist temporarily like illusion. When a person tries to know Brahman through his mind due to influence of Maya, Brahman appears as God or Ishwar, separate from the world and from the individual. Therefore, in reality, there is no difference between the individual soul and Brahman. One whose vision is obscured by ignorance does not see the non-dual nature of reality. Self-knowledge removes ignorance. After realization, one sees one's own self and the universe as the same non-dual Brahman. Vishishtadvaita Vedanta talks about Brahman as Vishnu. It was the principal exponent was sage Ramanuja. All the objects and things of the universe constitute the body of Brahman. Atma is the mental component of Brahman. The third one is Dvaita Vedanta. The principal exponent of this philosophy is Madhavacharya, and the philosophy talks about Brahman is a personal God, Vishnu. Jivas are different from God. Jivas are also different from each other. Inanimate objects are different from God. Inanimate objects are different from other inanimate objects. Inanimate objects are different from jivas, and most virtuous jivas are the eligible ones for liberation. The oldest among all the schools of Indian philosophy is Sankhya philosophy. This is so because the basic tenets of Sankhya can be seen in Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Yoga, Jainism and Vedanta. The Sankhya school of philosophy or Sankhya Darshana is founded by sage Kapila. It suggests a methodology of philosophical analysis. It is strong dualist theoretical exposition of consciousness and matter. Samkhya system laid a firm foundation for the Advaita Vedanta. The word Samkhya is based upon the Sanskrit word Sankhya, which means number. The school specifies the number and nature of the ultimate constituents of the universe and therefore imparts knowledge of reality. In fact, the term Sankhya also means perfect knowledge. Therefore, it is a system of perfect knowledge. This is what in general we understand about Sankhya. To go in depth, there are two views on the origin of this school. Some of them believe that the word Sankhya is derived from the word Samkhya, which means number as well as right knowledge. Right knowledge is about understanding the reality by specifying the number of ultimate constituents of the universe. Others viewed that Sankhya means perfect knowledge, that is about the reality. Now, when we talk about right knowledge and when we talk about perfect knowledge, there lies a fine difference. Right knowledge is what is true, and perfect knowledge is beyond any correction. Therefore, right knowledge helps in understanding the reality, whereas the reality itself is the perfect knowledge. With these introductions, let us now know Samkhya's metaphysics. Samkhya philosophy is regarded as dualistic realism. It is dualistic because it holds the doctrine of two ultimate realities, that is Prakrit and Purushas. It maintains the plurality of self, that is the Purusha, and the existence of matter, hence treated as pluralistic. It is realism because they viewed that both matter and spirit are equally real. The Sankhya school expresses that the self or the Purusha and the non-self, that is the Prakrit or the matter, are radically different from each other as like subject and object. As the subject can never be the object, similarly an object can never be the subject. In this regard, a few important questions are addressed here. We can ask questions to ourselves. What is the ultimate cause of an object? What are the constituents of the universe? Or what is the ultimate stuff of which the various objects of the world are made of? Sankhya replies that Prakriti is the ultimate or the first cause of all objects, including our mind, our body, and our sense organs. It is observed that every effect must have a cause. Therefore, cause and effect are two inseparable components that stand for all sorts of creation in the cosmos. Hence, all objects of the world are bounded in the chain of cause-effect relation. This relation Sankhya named as Satkaryavada and populated it as theory of causation. This theory of causation or Satkaryavada explains the effect that exists in its material cause prior to its production. For example, we can have curd existing in the milk before it comes into real existence. That is, we will always assume, or Satkaryavada assumes, or it tells that the curd is already existing in the milk before it comes into existence as a curd. Hence, the effect is not a real beginning or a new creation. So, it talks about that there is no real beginning or no real creation, because Sankhya has its root in Vedanta, which has no beginning and no end. So it talks about that. It is also named as Parinamavada. By refuting this view, Nayakas said that the effect is a new creation indeed. Or else, why do we say that this is the effect and that is the cause? The detailed analysis of Nyaya theory cause-effect relation, that is Asatkaryavada or the Arambhavada, is found in Nyaya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy supports the theory of Satkaryavada with a lot of arguments. Let us see the first argument. If the effect does not exist in the cause prior to its operation, none can bring into existence out of the cause. So, if there is no oil seed, how can the oil be produced? We cannot expect a mango from an apple tree or an apple from a mango tree. So the mango tree must have already the existence of mangoes or the capability to produce mangoes to come up with the result or the fruit at the end. Therefore, the effect is related to its cause. Effect is nothing but the manifestation of the cause. Thus, effect pre-exists in the material cause in a latent or unmanifested condition. A particular effect can be produced out of a particular material cause. Therefore, a mud jar can only be produced out of clay. It cannot be produced out of threads or out of steel or out of alloy because it is a mud jar. Therefore, it proves that the effects are existing in the cause in a latent condition because a particular effect can only be produced by a particular material cause. If the effect is not related to its cause, then every effect would arise from every cause. But does that happen? No. Every effect does not arise from every cause. For example, butter cannot be produced from sands, waters, or oils. It is produced from milk only. The effect pre-exists in the cause since it can be produced by a potent cause only. A potent cause has causal energy to produce a particular effect. The causal energy in this case is inferred from the perception of the effect. If the effect is not existent in the cause, then the causal energy can't be related to it. If the causal energy is unrelated to the effect, then any effect will arise from any cause. Hence, the effect must be pre-existent in its potent cause only. The effect pre-exists in the cause since it is identical in nature with its cause. The effect is not different from the cause. The cause is existent and therefore the effect cannot be non-existent. Hence, effect inheres in its cause. This is so because there is no identity between entity and non-entity. Therefore, the Sankhya disagrees with the Nyaya philosophy in case of the effect as a new creation. Now, a question might come to your mind that if every effect must have a cause, then what would be the cause of a material cause? We can respond to this query by expressing that Prakrit is the first and ultimate cause of all objects of the world, both gross and subtle. Prakrit is the ultimate cause of the universe. It is regarded as the first cause. All effects of the universe are based upon it. Being the first element of the universe, Prakrit itself is uncaused, eternal, and all-pervading. Hence, it is called pradhana. It can't be received or perceived but can be inferred from its effect. Thus, it is known as anuma. In the form of conscious elements, it is called jada, and in the form of unmanifested objects, it is called avayakta. Now, there is a difference between Prakrit and the objects. Objects are the effects of Prakrit. These are dependent, relative, many, and non-eternal because they are created and destroyed. But Prakrit, on the other hand, has neither beginning nor end. It is unborn, independent, absolute, one, eternal, and beyond creation and destruction. Objects are limited within the space-time continuum, but Prakrit is beyond it. Objects are manifest and composite, but Prakrit is unmanifest and without parts. Vyas Muni, he said that Prakrit is both is and is not. Now, how do we know that Prakrit actually exists? There are 5 arguments offered by Isvara Krishna or Ishwar Krishna or Lord Krishna for the existence of Prakrit. It follows, the world is constituted of manifold of objects. The existence of all the objects must have a cause. This is so because they themselves can't be the cause of their creation. Further, they are limited, dependent, relative, and have an end. Hence, the cause which creates them should be unlimited, exists beyond creation and destruction, independent and eternal. Therefore, such is the cause, that is Prakrit. The world is an amalgam of all varieties of objects. However, some common qualities are found among all the objects. As a result, pleasure, pain, and indifference subsist among all varieties of objects. This implies that there should be a common cause which possesses these 3 qualities, that is pleasure, pain, and indifference, and share in all the objects once they created. This cause is Prakriti. The activity is generated in the potent cause. All effects arise out of causes in which they are present in an unmanifest form. Evolution means the manifestation of what which is involved. The world of objects which are effect must therefore be implicitly contained in some world cause. Every cause has its effect. Thus, cause and effect are distinct from each other, although the effect exists in its material cause prior to its production. That is Satkarya Vada. By implication, therefore, the universe must have a cause. This cause unmanifests the universe in its totality. This cause is nothing but Prakrit. Sankhya Satkaryavada accepts the cause-effect relation as an inherence form which implies every effect inheres in its material cause. This holds that if the effect rolls back towards its cause, then it will dissolve in its cause. This helps to maintain the homogeneity in the universe, the balanced universe from where everything manifold is regarded as Prakrit. Now, there are 3 gunas of Prakrit. They are Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Sattva is the element of Prakrit which is of the nature of pleasure, light or laghu, and bright or illuminating, that is prakasaka. The tendency towards conscious manifestation in the senses, the mind and the intellect, the luminosity of light and the power of reflection in a mirror or crystal are all due to the operation of the element of sattva in the constitution of things. For example, blazing up a fire, upward curls of vapor, etc., sattva is believed to be white. It is everything that is illuminating, that is bright, that is pleasurable. Rajas is the principle of activity in things. Its color is red, whereas Sattva's color is white. It is active because of its mobility and stimulation. It is also the nature of pain. For example, on account of Rajas, fire spread, wind blows, mind becomes restless. So, Rajas is a kind of turmoil. It indicates something that is burning, that is mobile, that something is going to happen. It is concerned with the action of objects, of motion. So, in living beings, not only activity and restlessness, but pain is also caused by Rajas. Now, the third element is Tamas. Tamas is the principle of passivity and negativity in things. Its color is black. It is opposed to the Sattva guna because it is heavy, laziness, drowsiness. It produces ignorance and darkness and leads to confusion and bewilderment. Tamas is the constituent concerned with the inertia and inaction. In material objects, it resists motion and activity. In living beings, it is associated with coarseness, with negligence, with indifference, with inactivity, and whatever is negative. It is a manifestation of the negativity, the ignorance, the insensitivity, and the inaction of man. Now, let us move on to Sankhya and the theory of knowledge. Sankhya accepts three sources of valid knowledge, and those are perception, inference, and testimony. According to Sankhya, the manas or the mind, the mahat, the intellect or the buddhi, and the purusha, they play a role in producing knowledge. Samkhya cites out two types of perceptions: indeterminate, that is nirvikalpa, and determinate, that is savikalpa. Moving on to the other dualistic element of Sankhya, that is Purusha. Purusha is the self and is an eternal reality. It is the subject and the knower. It never be an object because the existence of objects can be proved in some ways, whereas non-existence can't be proved in any way. Purusha is neither the body nor the mind, neither ego nor intellect. It is not the substance which has the quality of consciousness. It is itself pure consciousness. It is the basis of all knowledge and is the supreme knower. It can't be the object of knowledge. It is the observer, which is eternally free, the impartial spectator and peaceful. It is beyond the space-time continuum, change and activity. It is the self-enlightened, self-proved, and hence Kozasui. It is all-pervading, formless, and eternal. Its existence can't be doubted because in its absence, all knowledge, even doubt, is not possible. It has been described as devoid of three gunas, that is negative, inactive, solitary witness, observer, knower, and of the nature of illumination. According to Sankhya philosophy, the Purusha is of the nature of pure consciousness and hence beyond the limits of Prakrit. It is free from distortions. Its objects changes, but it never changes. It is above self-arrogance, aversion, and any kind of achievement or attachment. Now, there are few arguments that Sankhya has for establishing the existence of Purusha or the self. It says that all the worldly objects are meant for someone. This is so because the conscious Prakrit can't make use of them. Hence, all these substances are for Purusha or self. Prakrit evolves itself in order to serve the Purusha's end. The three gunas, Prakrit and the subtle body, all are served to the Purusha. Substances of the universe are composed of three gunas. The Purusha is the witness of three gunas, and he is beyond from these gunas. Purusha is a pure consciousness which is beyond our experience and analysis. It is the substratum of all knowledge, both positive and negative. There can be no experience without him. This is so because he is the sole authority of all experiential knowledge. Since Prakrit is unconscious, it can't enjoy her creation. Hence, a conscious element is needed to make use of them. Prakrit is the one to be enjoyed, that is Bhogya, and so there must be an enjoyer, that is Bhokta. This argument supports the existence of Purusha. When there is a Bhogya, then there has to be a Bhokta. There are persons who try to get relieved from all sorts of sufferings of the world. The desire for liberation, for emancipation implies the existence of a person who can try to obtain liberation. Hence, it is enforced to accept the existence of Purusha. On the account of Sankhya, there are pluralities of self or Purusha. All these Purushas are identical in their essences and they are embedded with consciousness. Consciousness is found in all the selves. Now, this view is also similar in case of Jainism and Mimamsa because they believe in the plurality of selves. Now, the Sankhya school has its own values and educational implications. First of all, the aim of education according to Sankhya is that the ultimate aim is attaining the perfection of Purusha or the self through discrimination leading to its salvation. Thus, the aim of education should be to create discerning individuals capable of attaining perfection that exists within themselves. So, one Purusha will understand his or herself and discriminate them from the others. Discriminate in positive sense, that is your own identity you are able to acknowledge. Now, methods that can be adopted. Experiential learning can be facilitated by the involvement of sense organs. Activity-based learning can be facilitated through total participation from students through projects, practical works, enabling the development of logical reasoning. It also has its influence on the curriculum. The curriculum will involve the study of all disciplines with stress on natural science, since to understand Prakrit, it is important to discriminate between Prakrit and Purusha, that is the self which is Purusha, and the non-self, that is Prakrit or the matter, and the arts, so as to develop an appreciation and understanding of the works of authorities. Physical sciences and yoga will also be a part of the curriculum, since Sankhya believes that only a healthy and focused individual can attain salvation. According to Sankhya, the role of a teacher is to facilitate, to develop the innate potential that already exists in a child. The entire curriculum has to be learner-centered. Sankhya believes in multiplicity of the Purushas. It follows that education must be individualized and child-centered. It should be individualized because every child has its own unique potential and level of learning, and therefore individualization or personalization of education is important. It also talks about value education. Moral education involving the teaching of ethical values will definitely hold a place in any system of education based on Sankhya. The second of the Indian schools of orthodox philosophy is yoga. Yoga philosophy is one of the six major orthodox schools of Hindu philosophy. Though it is only at the end of the first millennium CE that yoga is mentioned as a separate school of thought in Indian texts distinct from Sankhya. Ancient, medieval, and most modern literature often refers to yoga philosophy simply as yoga. A systematic collection of ideas of yoga is found in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, a key text of yoga which has influenced all other schools of Indian philosophy. The metaphysics of yoga is Sankhya's dualism, in which the universe is conceptualized as composed of two realities, the Purusa, that is the witness consciousness, and Prakrit, that is the nature. Jiva, a living being, is considered as a state in which Purusha is bonded to Prakrit in some form, in various permutations and combinations of various elements, senses, feelings, activity, and mind. During the state of imbalance or ignorance, one or more constituents overwhelm the others, creating a form of bondage. The end of this bondage is called liberation or moksha by both the Yoga and Sankhya schools of Hinduism, and can be attained by insight and self-restraint. The ethical theory of yoga philosophy is based on yamas and niyama, as well as elements of the guna theory of Sankhya. The epistemology of yoga philosophy, like the Sankhya, relies on three of six pramanas as the means of gaining reliable knowledge. This include pratyakha, that is perception, anumana, that is inference, and shabda, that is aptavakana, word or testimony of reliable sources. Yoga philosophy differs from the closely related non-theistic, atheistic Sankhya school by incorporating the concept of a personal yet essentially inactive deity or personal God, that is the Ishvara. Yoga philosophy adopts the theory of guna from Sankhya and states that three gunas, innate tendency attributes, are present in different proportions in all beings, and these three are sattva guna, that is goodness, constructive, harmonious; the rajas guna, that is passion, active, confused; and tamas guna, that is darkness, destructive, and chaotic. These three are present in every being but in different proportions, and the fundamental nature and psychological dispositions of beings is a consequence of the relative proportion of these three gunas. When sattva guna predominates an individual, the qualities of lucidity, wisdom, constructiveness, harmonious, and peacefulness manifests individuals. When rajas is predominant, attachment, craving, passion, driven activity, and restlessness manifests. And when tamas predominates in an individual, ignorance, delusion, destructive behavior, lethargy, and suffering manifests. The gunas theory underpins the philosophy of mind in Yoga school of Hinduism. The early scholars of yoga philosophy posit that the Purusha, or the consciousness by its nature is sattva or constructive, while prakrit or matter by its nature is tamas or chaotic. They further posit that individuals at birth have buddhi. They are sattvic, they have intelligence. As life progresses and churns this buddhi, it creates asmita or ahankara. When ego in turn is churned by life, manas, temper, mood, or tamasic is produced. Together, buddhi, ahankar, and manas interact and constitute chitto in yoga, that is mind in yoga school of education or Hinduism. Unrestrained modification of chitta causes suffering, a way of life that empowers one to become even more aware of one's consciousness and spirituality innate in buddhi is the path to one's highest potential and a more serene, content liberated life. Patanjali's Yoga Sutra begins in verse 2 of Book 1 by defining yoga as restraint chitta buddhis. Let us now learn about Naya philosophy. The sage Gautama or Gautama is the founder of the Naya system of Indian school of philosophy. He is also known as Akshapada. Naya means argumentation. So the system is called the science of reasoning or Tarka Shastra. It is predominantly epistemological, intellectual, analytical, and logical. So it is also variously called as the science of logic or epistemology or Pramana Shastra. The science of causes, Hetuvidya, science of debate, Vadavedya, or the science of critical study, Anvisiki. Gautama's Naya Sutra is the main source of this school. Vatsayana's Naya Vashya, Udayatkara's Naya Vartika, and Vachaspati's Tatparya Tika are the other important sources of this school. Udayan's Naya Kusumanjali and Jayanta's Naya Manjari are also the important works of this system. Naya is allied to the Vaisheshika system. The former develops logic and epistemology, whereas the latter develops metaphysics or ontology. One deals with the right knowledge of reality and the other exposition of reality. Naya adopts mostly the Vaisheshika metaphysics, so it is called the system of atomistic pluralism and logical realism. Both the systems view the earthly life as full of suffering and they regard liberation as the absolute cessation of suffering. Both agree that bondage is due to ignorance of reality and liberation consists in the right knowledge of reality. However, there are some important points of difference between the two schools. Firstly, the Vaisheshika recognizes only 7 categories, whereas Naya accepts 16 categories and includes all the 7 of the former in the category called Pramaya or the knowable. Secondly, the Vaisheshika admits of only 2 pramanas, namely perception and inference, whereas Naya accepts the 4 pramanas, namely perception, inference, comparison, and verbal testimony. According to Naya, knowledge or jnana is the same as cognition or buddhi. It is also known as apprehension or upalabdhi, consciousness or experience, that is anubhav. Knowledge is that which reveals both the subject and the object. It is also revelation or manifestation of objects, that is artha prakasa. Just as a lamp reveals objects placed before it, so knowledge reveals objects which come before it. Naya says that knowledge may be valid or invalid. Right apprehension of an object is valid. Knowledge, in order to be valid, must correspond with reality, that is paratta pramana. So, valid knowledge is the manifestation of the object as it is. Invalid knowledge is what or which fails to manifest its object as it is. It is of four kinds: memory, that is smriti; doubt, samasya; error, viparaya; and hypothetical reasoning, that is tarka. Memory is not valid because it is representative and not presentative cognition. The object remembered is not directly presented to the soul but only indirectly recalled. Doubt is not valid because it is uncertain cognition. Error involves misapprehension of an object and does not correspond to the real object. And the hypothetical reasoning is not valid knowledge because it involves supposition devoid of certainty, as in the case of the argument: if there were no fire, there cannot be smoke. Therefore, it has a hypothetical reasoning which can't be called valid knowledge. Now, as Naya talks about four pramanas, the first one is perception or pratyakha. According to the Naya, there are four kinds of valid knowledge produced by four valid means, namely perception, inference, comparison, and verbal testimony. Perception is the cognition produced by the intercourse of the sense organs with the objects. It is the direct or immediate cognition. It involves the contact of the self with the manas with the sense organs, and the sense organs with the objects. There are two stages in the process of perception, namely indeterminate nirvikalpa and determinate savikalpa. Indeterminate perception is that which is not associated with a name. It is the immediate apprehension, the bare awareness, and the direct sense experience of the object. It is free from assimilation, discrimination, analysis, and synthesis. It is the consciousness of that which is not yet determined by the consciousness of the what. The determinate perception or savikalpa is the cognition of the object clearly with its name and attributes. It is seeing a rope as rope, cow as cow, or a chair as a chair, which is definite knowledge. It is seeing the object not merely as that, but also as what. It involves assimilation, discrimination, analysis, and synthesis. Determinate perception gives a differentiated, relational, and conceptual and articulate knowledge. For example, we see a white moving object at a distance, and when it comes near, we see it as a cow or white cow. The earlier stage of its perception is indeterminate and the latter one is determinate. Indeterminate perception presents the bare object without any characterization. It is psychological and not at all logical. It is confined to feeling and sensation, devoid of conception. Now, the Naya holds that two perceptions are not two different kinds indeed. There is only one perception, namely the determinate one. Indeterminate perception is only the earlier stage of the determinate perception. Thus, the two perceptions can be separated only in thought and not in reality. Now, the ordinary perception and the extraordinary perception, when we talk about this, the ordinary perception takes place when the sense organs come into contact with the objects in the usual way. It is internal as well as external. The extraordinary perception takes place when there is the contact of the sense organs with the object in an unusual way. Here, the objects are presented to the senses not in an ordinary way but through an extraordinary medium. The extraordinary perception is of three kinds: perception of the universals, perception through association, and the intuitive perception. Now, the second pramana, that is inference or anumana, is a kind of valid knowledge according to Nyaya. It is inferential or relational, and it is also called inference. Inference is the cognition which presupposes some other knowledge. Inferential knowledge is indirect, mediate, and arises through a mark or hetu. This mark is called the middle term or the linga, which is contained in the minor term, the paksha, dharmata, and invariably associated with the major term, sadhya. The invariable connection of the middle term with the major and the invariable concomitants or vapti is between them. It is the nerve of inferential knowledge. The Nayaka illustrates it with the following example. If we see smoke in the hill, we conclude or infer that there must be fire in the hill. Our inference here is based on our knowledge that smoke is invariably found with fire, vapti. In this example, the hill is the minor term, the fire is the major term, sadhya, and the smoke is the middle term, that is hetu. Here we infer the presence of the fire in the hill from the presence of the smoke in the hill. The third is the comparison or the upamana. Comparison is the third kind of valid knowledge. It is cognition derived by means of analogy or comparison between two objects. It has also been defined as the knowledge of the relation between a word and its denotation. It is produced by the knowledge of the similarity or resemblance. For example, recognizing a wild cow in the forest as gavya depending on its similarity to the cow. A person who has never seen a gavya and does not know what it is subsequently comes across a gavya in the forest and recognizes it as the wild cow because he was told shabda by another person that a wild cow looks like a domestic cow. The person has heard the word gavya and has been told that it is like an ordinary cow, and the person himself sees the animal denoted by the word gavya and recognizes it to be. The fourth one is verbal testimony or shabda. The last and the fourth kind of valid knowledge according to Nyaya is verbal testimony or shabda or agama. It means that the statement of a trustworthy or an authoritative person, Aptavakana, it consists in understanding the meaning of the authoritative statement. The Nyaya holds that the words and sentences have the power to convey their meaning. They derive the power from God or from a long established convention. Testimony is always personal in the sense that the words of a trustworthy person may be divine or human. So, the Nyaya speaks of two kinds of testimony, Vedic and secular. The Vedic testimony is perfect and infallible because the Vedas are spoken by God. The secular testimony is not infallible because it is uttered by humans and therefore liable to error. The Nyaya regards as valid the words of a trustworthy person who always speaks the truth. Besides trustworthiness, the words and the sentences of the trustworthy person must also be intelligible, for which they must conform to certain conditions. Now, Nyaya talks about causation or asatkaryavada. We have seen how Sankhya talks about satkaryavada. Here we will be seeing how asatkaryavada Nyaya is talking about. It defines a cause as an unconditional and invariable antecedent of an effect. It defines an effect as an unconditional and invariable consequent of a cause. It also holds that the same cause produces the same effect and the same effect is produced by the same cause. It rules out the theory of plurality of causes. Thus, Nyaya characterizes a cause with three essential features, namely antecedence, invariability, and unconditionality or necessity. A cause must be antecedent or prior to its effect. It must invariably precede its effect. It must also unconditionally or necessarily precede its effect. That is, the cause must be an immediate and direct antecedent of its effect. Accidental antecedents of an effect, like the potter's staff, and remote cause, like the potter's father, the co-effect, like the sound produced by the potter's staff, are not the causes of the effect called pot. For example, it says that it does not accept the view one and the same effect can be produced by any other cause. Cause and effect are reciprocal. Therefore, one cause can only produce one effect. And each effect has its distinctive features and has only one specific cause. For example, the threads are the inherent cause of the cloth, or the clay is the inherent cause of a pot. The threads of the clay is the material cause or substance of the effect of the cloth or the pot. The second is the non-inherent cause, which does not inhere in the material cause but helps in the production of the effect. For example, the conjunction of the threads which inheres in them is the non-inherent cause of the cloth, of which the threads are the material or the inherent cause. There is another cause which is efficient cause and is the power which helps the material cause to produce the effect. For example, the weaver is the efficient cause of the cloth. Therefore, here the cause is having an effect is described as the cause can be efficient cause. For example, the weaver. The cause can be the material cause, that is the clay or the thread. And the cause can be the non-inherent cause, that is the conjunction of the threads. So all three causes together they produce an effect. The Vaisheshika system is one of the 6 Hindu schools of philosophy from ancient India. Acharya Kannad in around 6th to 2nd century BCE presented his detailed atomic theory in Vaisheshika Sutra. Basically, Vaisheshika is a pluralistic realism. Acharya Kannad is also known as Kashyap. Vaisheshika came from the Sanskrit word referring to the distinctions. It emphasized the separateness of individual selves and objects. Moreover, it developed an atomic theory of the universe. All material objects of the universe are composed of parts that are divisible into even smaller parts, and those smaller parts can also be divided into further smaller parts. This minute or minutest particle of matter, which cannot be further divided, is eternal and partless. This particle is called Paramanu or atom, and these are said to be spherical or globular in shape. Creation is the combination of atoms in different proportions, and destruction is the dissolution of such combinations. Therefore, these combinations do not pre-exist in atoms nor form their essential nature. Acharya Kannad, the founder, cited atoms as the material cause of the universe, God as an efficient cause. Vaisheshika is primarily a metaphysics system of thought which classifies all beings, that is, all objects of experience, into 6 categories and postulates that all objects in the physical universe are reducible or reducible to a finite number of atoms. Dravya or substance. It is defined as the substratum where actions and qualities inhere. It exists independently of all other categories. There are 9 substances, 5 of which are physical substances, that is the bhutas, the panchbhut. What are those 9 substances? First is Prithvi or earth, Second, up or water. Third is tejas or fire. Fourth is vayu or air. Fifth is akasa or sky. Sixth is kala or time. Seventh is dim or space. Eight is atman, self or soul. And the ninth one is manas or mind. The Panchbhutas or the five elements are the earth, water, fire, air, and sky. The first four, earth, water, fire, and air, signify the ultimate, indivisible atoms which make up the physical universe. Ether is not atomic, that is, sky is not atomic, but is infinite and eternal and forms the medium in which the atomic elements combine with each other. Each of these five elements possess a unique quality: smell, taste, color, touch, and sound respectively, which corresponds to one of the five physical senses, and each element is said to constitute that sense. All the compound or substances avayavi dravya which arise from these simple substances are necessarily transient, impermanent, and subject to production and destruction. The other four substances, time, space, soul, self, and mind, are imperceptible, eternal, intact substances, partless and indivisible, but in ordinary discourse are spoken of as having parts and divisions. Time is the cause of our perception of past, present, and future, and also of the concepts of the old and the young. Space is the cause of our perceptions of the relative location of anything, whether it is left, right, east, west, north, south, near and far, here and there. Souls are innumerable, and each is an independent, all-pervading, eternal spiritual substance. Mind or manas is the eternal sense or antarandriya and is considered atomic, but it does not give rise to compound objects. The mind is also many rather than a single substance, and each is eternal and imperceptible. The second guna is inherent in a substance and depends for its existence on that substance. It cannot exist independently and possesses no quality or action itself. Guna is considered an independent reality because it can be conceived of, thought of, and named independently of the substance where it inheres. Kannad identified 17 qualities. Another 7 were added by Prashastapada. They include spiritual as well as material qualities. The Vaisheshika recognizes the following 24 qualities: Roop, color; Rasa, taste; Gandh, smell; Sparsh, touch; Sankhya, number; Pariman, size; Prithak, individuality; Samyoga, conjunction; Vibhag, disjunction; Paratva, priority; Aparatva, posterity; Buddhi, knowledge; Sukha, pleasure; Dukha, pain; Ichha, desire; Dvesha, aversion; Prayatna, heaviness; Rudravadva, fluidity; Sneha, viscidity; Dharma, merit; Adharma, demerit; Shabd, sound; Sanskara, faculty. Guna is a static and permanent feature of a substance. The third one is karma, that is activity or action. Karma also belongs to a substance and cannot exist separately from it. While guna is static and permanent, karma is dynamic and transient. Karma is the cause of conjunction and disjunction. There are 5 kinds of karmas: Utsepana, that is upward movement; Avaksepana is downward movement; Akunchana is contraction; Prasarana is expansion; Gamana is locomotion. The fourth one is samanya or universality or generality. Since there are plurality of substances, there will be relations among them. When a property is found common to many substances, it is called samanya. The samanya reside in substances, qualities and actions. They are of two kinds, higher and lower. The higher samanya refers to the satta and the lower samanya refers to the limited number of things. The fifth one is Vishesha. Vishesha allows us to perceive things as different from one another. Every individual is a particular, single, unique and different from all others. Visheshika does not use this category to refer to the individuality of compound objects, which can be distinguished by the differences in their parts. The category of Vishesha is applied to the most basic, simple, ultimate substances which would otherwise be perceived as alike. Each partless ultimate substance, including atoms, souls, space, time and mind, has an original peculiarity of its own and underived uniqueness. The last one is Samavaya, that is inherence. Samavaya is one and eternal relationship between two things inseparably connected. It is defined by Kannad as the relationship between cause and effect, and by Prashastapada as the relationship subsisting among things that are inseparable, standing to one another in the relation of the container and the contained, and being the basis of the idea this is in that. It is imperceptible and inferred from the relation of two things which are inseparably connected, the part and the whole, the quality and the substance, the particular and the universal, the particularity and the internal substance. Now, above theory also came after Kannad's Vaisheshika. Vaisheshika believes that knowledge, though it necessarily points to an object, is different from the object known and that object exists independently. Similarly, knowledge of negation points to an object which is negated and is different from that object. There are four kinds of abhav: the non-existence of thing before its production, the subsequent non-existence, and the non-existence of a thing after its destruction. The Mimamsa philosophy is one among the other schools of Indian philosophy. The Mimamsa school was founded by Jaimini in 400 BC. He was the author of Mimamsa Sutra. The commentator works on Mimamsa Sutra are primarily of Kumaliya Bhatta and Prabhakara Mishra. The word Mimamsa means revered thought, which is to be applied originally in the interpretation of the Vedic rituals. As Mimamsa deals with the initial part of the Veda and is therefore called Purv Mimamsa. The initial part of the Vedas concerns itself with human action, their rituals and the sacrifices, which is also called as Karma Kanda. The epistemology of the Mimamsa deals with the knowledge of an object. Kumarila regards cognition as a means of valid knowledge because of its apprehension or anubhuti, and he regards cognizedness produced by a cognitive act as its result. Prabhakara, on the other hand, vividly expresses that we cognize an object by means of valid knowledge, as it is an apprehension, but it is not to the means of recollection as it is found in case of memory. He identifies pramana with prama or valid knowledge and regards cognition as manifesting itself but not inferable form cognizedness of its object. For him, pramana is same as prama. Based on these views, all cognitions are valid and their invalidity is due to the disagreement with the real nature of objects. So, wrongness does not belong to the cognition but to the object cognized. Therefore, with these analysis, the Mimamsa philosophy discuss two theories, the Svata Pramanyavada and the Parata Pramanyavada. The former is translated as intrinsic validity and the latter is extrinsic validity of knowledge. Now, Svata Pramanyavada, knowledge of an object is valid by itself, it says. Validity of knowledge arises from the essential nature of the causes of knowledge, and it is not due to any extraneous conditions. To elucidate Parata Pramanyavada, knowledge is not self-evident but is validated by extraneous conditions. So, what is happening? In case of the former, we are considering knowledge itself as valid. But in case of the latter, we are trying to justify whether the knowledge is valid or not by means of the extraneous conditions. By doing integration or reshuffling of these two theories, we resulted in four theories. Svata Pramanyavada, that is intrinsic validity. Svata Apramanyavada, that is intrinsic invalidity. Parata Pramanyavada, that is extrinsic validity, and Parata Apramanyavada, that is extrinsic invalidity. Now, Mimamsa or Kumarila upholds Svata Pramanyavada and Parata Apramanyavada. For him, the validity of knowledge arises from the essential nature of its causes, untainted by defects, and is known by the knowledge itself. Intrinsic validity of knowledge consists in its being generated by the complement of causal conditions of the knowledge itself, and not by extraneous conditions besides them. The knowledge of validity is also generated by the aggregation of causal conditions which make the knowledge known. But the invalidity of knowledge arises from defects in the causal conditions of the knowledge. It is also known from the knowledge of the object itself. According to Mimamsa or Purva Mimamsa, there are 6 pramanas. Those are perception, inference, comparison, verbal testimony, postulation, and non-apprehension. Prabhakara, though, rejects non-apprehension. Kumarila Bhatta recognizes it. Prabhakara states that negation can't be an independent pramana. The reason he gives is a disagreement with positive facts or phenomena which are found in other pramanas. He accepts the other 5 pramanas. Perception, the first pramana, is a form of knowledge which results from the contact between the object and the sense organs. So whatever we feel with our sense organs, whether it is touch or sound or smell or taste, whatever we feel, these are all comes under perception, and perceptual knowledge is attained through it. Same as Nyayikas, perception is classified in 2 types, that is the Laukika and the extraordinary, that is Alaukika. When sense organs come into the contact with the object in the usual way, we have ordinary perception. Savikalpa determinate and Nirvikalpa indeterminate are the 2 forms of ordinary perception. Now, when it comes into the perceptual knowledge by means of extraordinary conditions, then our unusual medium, that is Alaukika. Now, inference is the second pramana, that is Anumana. The second kind of pramana or inference is a kind of knowledge which is based on previous cognition. In perception, we have direct knowledge of an object because there is a direct presentation of an object before our sense organs. Therefore, perceptual knowledge is immediate or pratyakko. In Anumana, there is no such direct presentation of the object, and therefore, it is called paraksha jnana or immediate knowledge. In Anumana, an object is inferred to be present in a particular case because it has been invariably perceived to be present in all such similar cases. Thus, in Anumana, the cognition of an object is based on our prior knowledge of it. For example, we see smoke in a distant hill. From the presence of smoke, we at once infer that these must be fire in the distant hill. Comparison or upamana. The upamana nor knowledge of an object is determined by comparing it from one with the other or the other similar kinds of objects. Thus, roughly it is treated as analogy. For example, assume a situation where a man has not seen a gavya or gaya or a wild cow. But if he has the knowledge or the sight of an ordinary domestic cow, he can also, by seeing a gavaya or wild cow, can assume that this has to be a wild cow. This knowledge is possible due to the upamana or comparison. Thus, upamana is the knowledge of the relation between a name and the object it denotes by that name. Verbal testimony or shabd. According to Mimamsa philosophy, testimony is a reliable statement uttered by a trustworthy person, similar to Nyaya philosophy. It is stated that a sentence consists of a group of words. A word is considered as an entity which has the power to express some meaning. Testimony is a valid knowledge which is derived from word or sentence. But all words or sentences can't be treated as testimony because all verbal expressions are not necessarily regarded as valid knowledge. On account of Mimamsikas, Shabd must be based on the verbal assertion of a trustworthy person who knows the truth and desire to speak the truth for the guidance of others. Verbal testimony is used as meaningful words or sentences. The mere combination of letters or words are not valid knowledge. Therefore, words and sentences must be used in a specific sense whose meaning will be clear or valid. Postulation or arthpati. This is a unique source of valid knowledge that upholds by the Mimamsikas. In other words, the Mimamsikas expressed arthpati as a valid method of cognition. The expression arthapati is a combination of two words, arth and apatti. The term artha means fact and apatti means kalpana, which is understood as supposition. Thus, etymologically speaking, arthapati is the knowledge which resolves the conflict between two facts. It entails a presupposition which solves the problem that occurred between two facts. Arthapati is the assumption of an unperceived fact in order to reconcile two apparently inconsistent perceived facts. When a known fact can't be accounted without another fact, we have to postulate the existence of a third fact. Let's say there is a fat man who is fasting in the day. In this proposition, we find two facts. The fat man is a human being alive and he is fat. The second is he is not eating in the daytime. In order to resolve this conflict, how a person will be so fat if that person is not at all eating during the daytime, we can postulate or we can bring in another fact, that is the third fact, that he might be eating too much at night. We have already talked about Vedanta and therefore Uttar Mimamsa. because it is one of the most significant of all Indian philosophies. It is the orthodox philosophical system of India. Now let us talk about the heterodox, or we can also call it the unorthodox schools of philosophy, which are the Buddhism, Jainism, and we also have Charvak. These philosophies are the ones which doesn't have its root in the Vedas. They might have similar beliefs and similar goals, that is moksha or nirvana, but it has flexibility in it and it is not that rigid as the orthodox ones. Let us start with the first school of heterodox philosophy or heterodox school of philosophy, that is Buddhism. Now, Buddhism or Buddhist school, it is a system of beliefs based on the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama. We also call Gautama Gautam Buddha. Now, Buddhism is a non-theistic philosophy whose tenets are not especially concerned with the existence or non-existence of God. Now see here the difference between the orthodox and the heterodox. In the orthodox, we don't question the existence of God. But in case of heterodox, the concern is not regarding the existence or non-existence of God, which means we have a place where we might question. Now Buddhism is founded on the rejection of certain orthodox Hindu philosophical concepts. It has many philosophical views with Hinduism, the common ones, such as it believes in karma, it also believes in cause and effect relationship, just like the Nyayikas or the Sankhya, between all that has been done and all that will be done. It talks about the events that occur are held to be direct results of the previous events. So there is the cause exists in the effect. The ultimate goal for both is to eliminate karma, that is both good and bad, end the cycle of rebirth and suffering and attain freedom, that is moksha. So when we are looking for the similarity between the heterodox and the orthodox schools of philosophy, we also look at that how these two schools talks about karma, it talks about the cycle of rebirth, how to end it, how to end the suffering, and how to attain moksha or liberation. Buddhism talks about the reality, how it is realistic or related to the reality through its four noble truths. The four noble truths in Buddhism are: there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering, there is cessation of suffering, there is a way to cessation of suffering. Now, when we are talking about suffering, what do you mean by suffering? Suffering is such a term which can refer to anything. Suffering is nothing but dukkha. When we talk about dukkha, maybe if somebody is hitting us, that is dukkha. If we are losing a person whom we love the most, that is dukkha. If we are not getting a piece of cake that we were craving for, that is dukkha. So what is actual dukkha? It thinks about that what do we mean by dukkha, and how dukkha is a broad term. Everything that we desire for and we are left out without that gives us dukkha. Every material object that exists in the world. Now, the second it talks about is that there is a cause of suffering. So, every suffering has a cause. We can't have suffering without a cause. Even if we consider not getting a cake to eat during a birthday or someone's birthday, that is also a cause for a suffering. That is, in my birthday, for example, if you it's your birthday and you were desiring to have a cake but you didn't get it, then your not getting the cake is the cause, and the suffering is your sadness. In the similar way, if we look at in a deeper terms or in depth, that if we lose someone, losing someone is the cause, and as we lost someone, that effect is what causes suffering. So here also we can see the cause and effect relationship. Now the third one talks about that there is a cessation of suffering. That is, every suffering has an end. There can't be a suffering which is persisting lifelong. If we go to the, in a philosophical term, even when we lose a person, a beloved person of our life, there is a time when we will not feel the same way the loss as we felt when it occurred currently. As we there is a saying that goes that time and tides wait for none. It's the same thing, that the suffering also has an end. With time everything heals, so suffering will also end with time. The fourth noble truth is that there is a way to cessation of suffering. If the suffering is persisting or it is persistent, then what to do? How do we end the suffering? It says that every suffering has an end, and what is the way that a person has to think about themselves? They can end the suffering through self-actualization, through moksha, through salvation. It says that to attain that salvation or to bring an end to the suffering, the ways are the Ashtanga Marg or the Eightfold Paths. Now, what are these Eightfold Paths? These Eightfold Paths are the right faith, Samyak Drishti, right resolve, that is Samyak Sankalp, right speech, Samyak Vakya, right action, that is Samyak Karmanta, right living, Samyak Ajiva, right thought, Samyak Sriti, right concentration, Samyak Samadhi, and right effort, that is Samyak Vyama. There are three base pillars also in Buddhism known as the three Ratnas, that is Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Buddha means the highest spiritual potential in every human being, how much they can reach, the spiritual potential they have to reach. Dhamma refers to the teachings of Buddha, and Sangha is the organization of the monks practicing Buddhism. One of the major reasons why Buddhism spread across the subcontinent was its use of Pali. Pali was the language of the common people, and unlike Sanskrit, it became very common to the people, and it was not restricted only to the elite Brahmins. The literary sources of Buddhism are the three Tripitakas, written in Pali, the Sutta Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka, and the Abhidhamma Pitaka. The three Pitakas, or the three baskets, refers to the collection of Buddhist scriptures or Buddhist canon that relate to discourses with the Buddha, that is Sutta Pitaka, regulations of monastic life, that is Vinaya Pitaka, and commentaries on the sutras by renowned monks and scholars, that is Abhidhamma Pitaka. When Buddhism was transmitted to East Asia through China, and the Buddhist scriptures translated from various Indian and Central Asian languages to classical Chinese, the lingua franca of educated discourse throughout East Asia, including Korea, there were several attempts by several countries to inscribe them in wooden printing blocks for distribution. Now, let us talk about the Buddhist values and educational implications. The first Buddhist value or educational implication of the Buddhist value is that we will talk about the value and how it is having an educational implication. First is cosmopolitan. The Buddhist education was free from communal narrowness. There was no favoritism on the basis of caste, creed in the centers. This kind of narrowness or communal narrowness was present in the orthodox schools. There the Brahmins, the elite Brahmins, enjoyed reading the Sanskrit and the Vedas and the Upanishads. Here, Buddhist education was not limited to the elites, but it was free for all, and there is no difference or discrimination. So the educational implication of this point is that Buddhism talks about inclusiveness, which our modern Indian education also talks about. The modern Indian classroom should be inclusive in every way. Second is total development of personality. Buddhist education laid much emphasis on the physical, mental, and spiritual development of the novice. So even today, when we talk about the aim of education, it is the integration of personality that can develop the various aspects of the individual which are interlinked. It talks about a sound mind in a sound body. It talks about how an individual is going to develop, not just physically, academically, mentally, and as well as spiritually. The third one is no corporal punishment. Now, corporal punishments were absolutely forbidden, which is also very true in the present scenario of education. How is corporal punishment related to education? When we talk about the terms, the psychological terms, the psychology which talks about behaviorism or the behavioristic psychology, that there is a difference between punishment and negative reinforcement. Now, what is punishment? Punishment is when you are torturing a person, whether it is mentally, physically, spiritually. We are punishing a person, causing suffering to that person, which is completely illegal in today's times in case of education. No child can be beaten, or no child can have such kind of torture which might lead that child towards something which is very serious. It is considered one of the heinous crime nowadays. Now, the fourth point is positivism. Positivism in Buddhist philosophy is positivistic and has a careful logical systematization of ideas. Our Indian education system or the Indian education classroom talks about positivity and also a logically systematization of the teaching and learning scenario. The fifth point is ethical. Buddhist philosophy is ethical. The Eightfold Path to Nirvana makes a universal appeal. Even our current education system talks about ethics. It talks about ethics even in research. Next is democratic. It is democratic as it believed in freedom of inquiry. Democratic and republican procedures are followed while running the educational institutions in our country. Next is development of good conduct. The entire techniques of Buddhism provide directions to develop good conduct and also the essence of a sound system of education. Also, its belief is in karma lays stress on the necessity to be constantly on the vigil to maintain one's conduct in the present life. Now, it says that how do we develop a good conduct? See how it can also be related to our Indian educational classroom. It says that karma says that every activity done by every individual should be under vigilance, because the moment we are not under vigilance, we might tend to act in a negative manner. So in order to be positive or to build a good conduct, we need a person who observes us or guides us. The teacher plays the role of the observer or the guide or the facilitator here. Next is moral discipline. The Buddha, bhikkhu, the monk, took the vows of chastity and poverty. Character was the basis of moral discipline. So here education talks about character building. Emphasis on manual skills. Training of manual skills like spinning and weaving was emphasized to enable men and women to earn for living. How is manual skills relevant to today's education? When we have vocational education, after class 10th itself we can pursue. Pragmatic. It is pragmatic, everything is in a state of flux as it is only momentary. Change is the rule of the universe. It does not believe in the absolutism. It is witnessed in the present era of globalization. Even the educational scenario has changed a lot after the pandemic. Now, methods of teaching. The method of instruction was oral. Preaching, repetition, exposition, discussion, and debates were all used. Buddhist Council organized seminars to discuss the major issues at length. Even in today's classroom, we use the lecture method, we use recapitulation, we use discussion and debates and innovative practices in the teaching and learning environment. Next is international impact. Buddhist education helped India to gain international importance. It also developed cultural exchange between India and other countries of the world. International exchange of scholars attracted students and scholars from far off lands. Next is value education and character development. To be moral being, one must follow noble path. The Eightfold Path, as preached in Buddhism, provides guidance for moral education and peace. The entire technique of Buddhism provides directions to develop good conduct, which is also the essence of sound system of education. Curriculum. Curriculum included secular as well as the religious subjects. Our curriculum of the Indian education system is also versatile, and it includes different kinds of subjects and includes the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach towards it. Organization and structure of universities. Universities established during this period are still serving as a guiding force. The organization of Nalanda and Vallabhi University was advanced that it continues to influence the organization and structure of university till present today. The system of determining a minimum age for higher education, providing a set of rules and taking a test for admission is even prevalent today in the educational structure. Education as a social institution. Education as a social institution got its existence as a result of Buddhist education system. Imparting education in practical subjects. An important contribution of this period is the imparting of education in various practical subjects, a tradition which has come down to the present day also. Practical subjects such as the physical ones like the handicrafts, drawing, painting, performing arts and all. Collective teaching methodology. It was in this period that the method of collective teaching and the presence of numerous teachers in single institution were evolved. The second heterodox school that we are going to learn about is Jainism. Jainism is independent of Buddhism, yet it resembles it in several aspects, such as in its repudiation of the authority of the Vedas, its pessimistic outlook on life, and its refusal to believe in Supreme God. But the differences it exhibits are equally noticeable, such as its recognition of permanent entities like the self, that is Jiva, and matter. Derived from the word Jina, with root in Ji, it means victor. That is the one who has successfully subdued his passions and obtained mastery over oneself. The origin of Jain philosophy traces back to the prehistoric time. It is said there were 24 Tirthankaras, which means liberated persons who preached the truth which was handed over one by one in course of time. Like one Tirthankara to the other Tirthankara, and they kept on passing their knowledge and the truth. The last of them was Vardhamana, also called Mahavira, a contemporary of Gautam Buddha. Jainism and reality. Metaphysically, Jainism believes in plurality of souls and not in the existence of God. This is very vital. It holds that there are as many souls as there are living beings. They also accept the existence of souls even in animals and plants, with degrees of difference in the level of consciousness. They believe that every soul is capable of attaining infinite consciousness, power, and happiness by removing all karmas or bondages. Infinite faith, infinite knowledge, infinite power, and infinite bliss is the state of liberation. According to Jainism, nirvana or liberation is obtained through three jewels. What are the three jewels? Or the three ratnas, that is, right philosophy, right knowledge, and the right conduct. Right conduct implies 5 abstinences. How to maintain a right conduct, it talks about. What not to do. First is not to lie, not to steal, not to strive for attaining luxury, not to strive for possessions, not to be unjust, and not to injure anyone, that is ahimsa. Ahimsa is most vital in the principle of Jainism. Jainism rejects the idea of the creator of the world. It believes reality to be many-sided. It is plural. Jainism emphasizes Sadvada or Anikantvada, which lays that mind open to truth coming from any quarter. There are multiple realities. No proposition about the truths can be absolute, so everything knowledge is relative. This generates tolerance and regard for all. Now, what are the practical teachings of Jainism entangling knowledge and values? Three Ratna, or three gems of its teachings, were considered three precious principles of lives. What are the three Ratnas? We talked about right conduct, right faith, right action. Now, three Ratnas are the precious principles of life. Next is, there are 5 vows of abstinence that indicates a general character. Ahimsa is the foremost virtue in Indian thought, but in Jainism, it requires distinct meaning and depth. It is non-violence in word, thought, and deed. Now, there is a very important emphasis on the word ahimsa. When we talk about ahimsa in general, as a layman, we think that if we are not hurting a person physically, that is ahimsa. But no, according to Jainism, ahimsa is not hurting a person with your word, not even thinking about hurting a person, and forget about the deed of hurting a person. So even if you think that I feel like hitting a person, or I feel like killing a person, or I think that if that person faces an accident or meets with an accident, it will be a good one, even that is himsa for Jainism. Emphasizing the individualistic aspect, Jainism emphasizes on the development of personality as the final aim. Jain teachings are social and tolerant and believe in happiness of all. There are 2 levels of discipline depending on the severity of the vows, which are different for the monks and of lay life. The aim of life is to get oneself disentangled from karma. Karma is a cycle. To stop the cycle and to attain moksha, be liberated, is the aim of life. Jainism believes in transmigration of the soul. The soul united with karma is called a soul in bondage and is to be redeemed, is to be liberated. Moksha means dissolution of partnership between soul and matter, restoring the ideal character of the jiva. Jainism rejects God as the creator of this world, as a need to create the world would be inconsistent with his necessary perfection. Jainism looks upon man himself as God when his inherent powers are fully in bloom. So, Jainism talks about that the man can create hell and heaven in earth by their own deeds. He himself is like a god. Jaina views are both relativistic and pluralistic, as it recognizes jivas and the material objects. It says relativistic and pluralistic because there are many jivas, many souls. If there is one concept, for example, the concept of ahimsa, I might perceive ahimsa in some way, the other person might perceive ahimsa in some other way. So there will be many perception of the same concept. The primary aim of Jainism is the perfection of the soul rather than the interpretation of the universe. Hence, it fails to find the ultimate solution of the metaphysical problem. Now, let us learn about the 2 sects of Jainism, that is the Digambara and the Shvetambara. The Digambaras always remain naked, whereas the Shvetambaras wear white clothes. The Digambaras are also called the sky-clad. The Digambaras believe that being sky-clad is a prerequisite to attain salvation, whereas the Shvetambaras do not believe in complete nudity. They follow the path of Parasvanatha, who always wore white robes. The Digambaras believe that the women are not capable of attaining salvation since they could not observe the vow of non possession strictly. On the other hand, according to Svetamvaras, women are equally qualified to attain salvation. Also, with regard to omniscience, the Digambaras believe that monks do not require any food. Svetamvaras refute this as they believe any monks or nuns need food to nourish their body as long as they discard the body. Jainism also has its educational implications. The major contributions of Jainism to education is that Jainism has made important contribution to art, architecture and literature. Jain philosophy and culture have been a major cultural and philosophical, social and political force since dawn of civilization in Asia. It has strong emphasis on non-violence. The distinguishing feature of Jain philosophy is its strong emphasis on the non-violence, accent on multiple facets of truth, morality and ethics. Integrated. The contribution of Jain philosophy in the development of Indian philosophy has been significant. Jain philosophy concepts like ahimsa, karma, moksha, sansar, and alike has been assimilated into philosophies of other Indian religions like Hinduism and Buddhism. It is impossible to separate Indian religion, philosophy, and education. The concept of compassion, sense of sympathy extends to all living beings, even to animals, as stated in both Jainism and Buddhism. Now, contribution to a strain of pacifism. Absolute respect for living beings is stressed. Best way to resist evil is through non-violence. It is successfully used in Jainism as well as Buddhism. Next is the law of karma, that is the cause and effect. Universe is ruled by moral law which punishes all sins and rewards good deeds. Belief that our character creates its own heaven and hell is significant in nearly all schools of philosophy. Aims of education. The education has always aimed at some of the philosophical and religious objectives enlisted in Indian philosophy of education. It is clear that main objective of education in India since earliest days of civilization had been man-making who is capable of self-realization. So the aim of education is self-realization, self-actualization, attaining the moksha or liberation of the soul. The highest state of knowledge. The highest state of knowledge is intuition, through which man achieves a realization of oneness of the universe. Most of the Indian philosophy's essence lies in this aspect. is the Charvaka philosophy. The Charvaka is a non-Vedic Indian materialistic school of philosophy named after a sage called Charvak, the founder of this system, according to a popular view. But some think that Charvaka was a prominent disciple of Brihaspati, the actual founder of the school. Etymologically, Charvaka means sweet-tongued or Charuvak. Therefore, Charvakas are sweet words. They are votaries of pleasing ideas if only one chooses to follow their ways. There is a condition applied. Some hold that Charvaka has its etymology in charva, which means to chew or eat. It is an allusion to their doctrine of eat, drink, and make merry. The Charvakas are those who take no notice of virtues and vices. Charvaka was also called Lokayatya, which is the combination of the two words Loka, the world, and Ayata means basis. It accepts only the reality of the material world. See how it is much different from what we have learned so far. In other words, Charvakas are the people who care only about the earth and not about the heaven. According to the scholars, the origin of the school can be traced back to post-Upanishadic period. The Buddhist texts of this period mentions several heterodox teachers such as Sanjaya, the skeptic, Ajita, the materialistic, Purana, Kasyapa, the indifferentialist, and Kosala, the fatalist, and Katyayana, whose ideas in some way or the other came closer to the views of Charvak. It is probably in this ambience of skepticism, materialism, and nihilism that Charvak philosophy would have originated. It must be noted that it is around the same time that the atomists and the sophists became popular in Greece. Now, the chief among the all Purvapakshas or refutations as provided by the opponents, the chief among them are Madhavacharya's Sarva Darshana Samgraha, Samkara's Sarva Siddhanta Sangraha, and Krishan Mishra's Prabodha Chandrodaya. According to Charvakas, perception or pratyakha is the only source of valid knowledge, and they hold that nothing exists except what is perceived by the five senses. Accordingly, they refuted inference, anumana, and testimony, that is shabd, which are accepted by almost all other schools of Indian philosophy as valid and reliable. For them, perception is of two kinds, the external and the internal. The former kind involving the operation of the five senses, while the latter involves the operation of the mind. Knowledge is the outcome of contact between an external object and one of the five senses, although further knowledge may be acquired through the process of the mind operating with the sense knowledge. Ultimately, all knowledge is derived from the senses. For them, inference is not a valid means of knowledge because universal relation which should serve as its ground is impossible. For example, whatever has smoke has fire. The hill has smoke, therefore the hill has fire. Here, a universal and necessary relation is assumed between the smoke and the fire. Charvakas question this. They ask, how did you get this knowledge from the kitchen where you have seen fire and smoke? But it cannot give you necessary relation between fire and smoke. Have you observed all kitchens to affirm their co-presence? What about the past and the future instances? So no one can be certain about any relation. In inference, we proceed from the known to the unknown, and there is no certainty in this. Though some inferences may turn out to be accidentally true. Charvakas brought several other objections against the possibility of a valid inference. Number one, impressions created by inferential knowledge are not as vivid as those made by perception. Inference always depends on other things for the determination of its objects. Inference has to depend on perceptual statements. Inferential knowledge is not directly produced by the objects. Inference is not concrete. Inference is often contradicted. There is no proof which may establish that every case of the presence of the reason should also be a case of the presence of Prabandham or Sadhya. Now, the metaphysics of Charvak, which is directly and logically derived from the epistemology, is an unqualified materialistic monism. They hold a philosophy of the matter, which means matter is all and everything. Since perception is the only reliable source of knowledge, whatever is known through it alone is real, and matter becomes the only reality in Charvak philosophy. Since perception does not reveal any metaphysical entity, what it can perceive is only matter in its fourfold form: earth, water, fire, and air. Charvakas do not accept Akas or ether, sky, because it is not an object of perception. We cannot feel it. The four elements are real, not as subtle forms, but in their gross particle forms. There is no reality other than these four elements and their combinations. Now, how Charvakas view the God? As Charvakas do not believe in any metaphysical reality beyond matter, it logically follows that they outrightly consider that traditional concepts of God, religion, and life after death are pure fictions, sheer imaginations of fevered brains. So you can see how the modern world is similar to the Charvaks. What is going on in the modern world? There is nothing existent beyond this material world. Hence, there is no survival of anything, no other world, and no God as unmoved mover, the first cause and the creator of the universe. Since all that exists is only matter, God, who is supposed to be a supernatural and transcendental being, does not exist, as it cannot be the object of perception, the only valid means of knowledge. Thus, Charvakas summarily deny the existence of God and dethrone God, who is supposed to indwell in the human beings, as Antaryamin. They also de-recognize, concise the voice of God which guides man. Subsequently, they rule out the possibility of religion as the realm of faith and belief systems that assume human beings' innate thirst for spirituality and structure their consciousness towards a destiny beyond this world, and has no basis in the true nature of reality according to their scheme of things.
There is no world other than this world. There is no heaven and no hell. The realm of religions and gods are fabricated by stupid impostors. While you are alive, live with joy, as no one can escape death's searching eye. When once your body is burnt, how can you ever again return? These were the words of Charvaks, a major materialistic philosophy of ancient India. This was one of the oldest non-Vedic and non-dharmic schools. According to them, there is no life after death. The only life we have is in this world, and that also is not permanent. Therefore, this life itself should be enjoyed completely. The attainment of sensual pleasure and wealth should be the only goal of life. Charvaks differed in many of the ethical concepts from all other religions of its time, including Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Ajivikas. They rejected metaphysical concepts like reincarnation, the effectiveness of religious rites, rituals, and sacrifices, fate, and the accumulation of merit or demerit through the performance of certain actions. Charvaks also rejected the use of supernatural causes to describe natural phenomena. To them, all natural phenomena were produced spontaneously from the inherent nature of things. Charvak school believed matter is the material and the cause of universe. It will always exist. That's why Brihaspati says, Out of matter emerges life. They believed in the philosophy of eat, drink, and be merry. They did not believe in the importance of spiritual values and believed that there was nothing wrong with sensual pleasure. They understood that pleasure is often accompanied by pain. But they say no one throws a grain because it has the husk. The husk comes as a byproduct. They admit that there is sorrow everywhere. Still, this world of ours is not full of misery only. Pleasure is greater than pain. Since it is impossible to have pleasure without pain, Charvaks thought gaining pleasure and avoiding pain should be the supreme goal of life. Charvaks rejected the need for ethics or morals and suggested while a person is alive, he must live happily. Let him feed on the most delicious food even though he runs in debt. Unlike most of the Indian philosophers of the time, they believed that only a fool indulges himself in penances, fast, and chastity. For them, there was no existence of heaven or hell. They believed the enjoyments of heaven lies in eating delicious food, keeping the company of young women, and using fine clothes and perfumes, while moksha or nirvana is death. Charvaks were critical of the Vedas, and to them, the Vedas suffered from several faults, like errors in transmission across generations, untruth, deception, and self-contradiction. Charvaks declared the Vedas to be incoherent books, whose only usefulness was to provide a livelihood to the priests. They also held the belief that Vedas were invented by man and had no divine authority. For Charvaks, direct perception is the only means of valid knowledge. That which cannot be perceived is not knowledge at all. They believed that all knowledge is located only in the sense organs. Perceptions are of two types, external and internal. External perception is described as that arising from the interactions of the five senses and the worldly objects, while this school describes internal perception as that of the inner sense, that is the mind. But they don't accept the mind as an independent sense organ, so they don't admit internal perception through the mind. The Charvaks don't admit inference as a means of valid knowledge. They argued inference is prone to being either right or wrong, and therefore conditional, and with the possibility of error. For example, when we infer the existence of fire on a hill based on the perception of smoke up there, we take a leap in the dark from the perceived smoke to the unperceived fire, because we know there can be smoke even without the existence of fire. According to them, the matter is the only reality. They accept only four basic elements, that is, earth, water, fire, and air. Ether or space is not accepted as the fifth element because it cannot be perceived by the senses. They believed that consciousness and soul are the byproducts of the living material, or the byproduct of life in this world. So for them, the concept of the soul is just a fake, as it cannot be perceived. The traditional name of Charvak is Lokayat. It was called Lokayat as the word Lokayat means something prevalent among the people. The meaning of the word Lokayat signifies directed towards or aiming at the world. Payasi and Ajit Kes Kambali, mentioned in the Buddhist literature, and Aruni, mentioned in the Upanishads, are some of the first materialists in the Indian context. Although materialist schools existed in India before Charvak, it was the only school which systematized materialist philosophy by setting them down in the form of scripture called Brihaspati Sutra, which was written sometime between the 6th and 4th century BC. Brihaspati is believed to be the founder of this philosophy. The origin of the name Charvak applied to this philosophy is not very clear, but some scholars say that Charvak is the name of a disciple of Brihaspati. Charvak also means sweet-tongued. Sometimes it's interpreted as to chew, or someone who chews the self. Brihaspati Sutra, the original work of Charvaks, are now lost and are not traceable. The knowledge about them is obtained from secondary sources like Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain texts. However, there is a text that still exists which belongs to the Charvak tradition, known as the Tattva Paplava Simha, which was written by the philosopher Jairasi Bhatta. This book was written in the 9th century and means the lion which uprooted all other philosophies. This school of philosophy has been rejected by the other schools of Indian philosophy. Charvaks were opposed by almost all of the mainstream schools of thought and were targeted and ridiculed by them. However, Charvaks successfully demonstrated a new path and approach to the Indian philosophers. The Charvak philosophy also helped other schools by making them more logical and rational. If you found value in this video, please give it a thumbs up. We are constantly coming out with new videos on the life of Buddha and the Buddhist heritage. If the information provided by the video was useful, please subscribe to the channel for similar informative videos on Buddhism. Please share your thoughts in the comment section on the Charvak school of ancient India, which believed in extreme materialism.
So, to conclude, we have gone through all the orthodox and heterodox schools of Indian philosophy which are majorly known to have its contribution to the educational scenario. Now, Indian philosophy is vast and profound and is rich in values. From an epistemological point of view, it holds man to be the center of the universe, who should be turned into human through education and self-realization. And we can see how all the philosophies except Charvak, they talk about self-realization, they talk about salvation, they talk about attaining moksha. And the Indian education system talks about building up character, self-actualization by attaining true education. It holds that religion consists of values and morals, and our entire life is judged by the karma we perform in the span of life. Liberation or moksha is the ultimate goal, which is a belief far distant from the Western school of thought, which believes in materialism, which is kind of can be related to the Charvak philosophy.